So my other question, we dive now a little bit into the strategy on how to set up a clinical trial. My question goes to Ludo again. It's about risk management. Is risk management a buzzword? And why it is not? And why do you need a good quality system before you start your clinical trial?
So risk management is definitely not a buzzword. It's just that it's so important. We hear it all the time, and that's why you feel that it's a buzzword, because it's just used in so many different manners, right? But when it comes to risk management, I think what's the most important thing is ensuring that there's an understanding of the context in which the company is working, right? So understanding your product, your therapeutic area, and your partners. And understanding this environment in which you're working, and understanding all the different parameters that can hinder you from achieving your regulatory compliance goals or even your corporate goals. So that's what I would say. And then your quality management system is actually a tool that can help you ensuring that you have a proper way to evaluate your risks and document it for future reference.
Yes, and maybe you are aware of that, but with the new regulations, you're now, as a sponsor, you need to have a quality management system in place when you start your first clinical trial. It's not optional, it's really a must. Dominik, a question for you. It's how you align in a company the long-term goal with the study objectives. So where to start? Do you have first the objectives or then the long-term goal, or first the long-term goal and then the objective?
Yeah, that's again a challenging question. Of course, I think starting before or latest at indication selection, I think it's important to start planning, of course, from the end with the unmet need of the indication, with a clinical development plan up to launch. On the other hand, as we all know, biotech is like building a plane while flying it in it. So it's an overlapping left and right activity. So I think, if I remember your question correctly, I think it's important to plan from the end when you start with clinical development, but not overdo it to a detail that you don't see the trees anymore, the forest anymore, of the tree. You know what I mean. So to having like a framework and an orientation towards like the end game, the approval, like the target indication, but always with the resources you have in hand, with the team you have, to make all this fit for purpose and not getting lost in planning in a rabbit hole and not moving the whole thing forward. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I think you want to say we need to keep the agility of the situation. You shouldn't plan too much ahead, have a overall goal and then adapt as needed.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Any comments from the panel to that? I think that's...
Well, I like to see this a bit like when you're buying your first car, right? As a young adult, you need a steering and brakes, and it gets you from A to B. But you make sure that you're safe because you can direct the car, you can stop it whenever you need. But then your second car, you want just a bit more comfort, right? So as time passes by, you're kind of adding options, but you need to start with the basic minimum that needs to be there, otherwise you're not safe. Then afterwards, you can add the nice things like the massaging chairs, the heated mirrors and whatnot. But then you need to start with, the basics, the steering, the brakes. And that's how I would like to compare it,
Okay.
Yeah, I can maybe also comment, and I think we haven't addressed this yet. And you spoke initially of, well, what is a mindset that you need in order to achieve clinical trials? And you alluded to this already, Ludovic. It's very clear that the mindset of doing clinical trials is a quite different one from doing research. And it's highly, of course, regulated because you, at the end, do experiments with human patients. So, of course, everything needs to be done under GXP and under very strict guidelines that are created or imposed by the regulatory authorities. And that's not only for doing the clinical trial under good clinical practice, but it's the good manufacturing practice, the good laboratory practice for the non-clinical data, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, Markus, you also said the data, the quality of the data has to be bulletproof. And this is where, you're in a highly regulated environment, and therefore sometimes you really have to switch your mind from being creative in kind of maybe getting to your compound, your innovation, and then all of a sudden you have to switch over your mindset from being creative to complying with kind of the regulatory framework that you are in, and making sure that your data is clean, and that it's all validated, that it complies to the GXP kind of regulations. And this applies, of course, to all the areas of, well, what you need as components and parts in bringing your compound to a clinical validation. I think this is, I mean, I'm speaking the obvious here. I think everyone knows that, but sometimes it's underestimated what kind of complexity that brings into the game. And that requires a slightly different mindset. And I think quality management is a particular aspect of that, where researchers are sometimes driven nuts when things get, I mean, how do I know that that assay actually shows me the data that they're supposed to show you? Well, you need to validate that assay, and where does the validation end? That again goes into risk management, where you say, well, I think the risk is limited. If I do the third validation of the validation of the validation, I think we are fine. So this is, a huge complexity that I've experienced over the years. But the devil is in the detail, and it needs to be done. The attention to detail is absolutely required in order to make sure that the data at the end is bulletproof. And maybe I stop here, but this is a little bit where kind of maybe it connects to, well, coming from creativity to kind of being a little bit more structured in terms of complying to the regulations, and then making sure that you have everything, all your kind of bits and pieces in place, and then you can move forward. Not to get lost, as you mentioned, into detail and not moving things forward. Therefore, we have the risk assessment, and sometimes we have to take risks.